Hi, and welcome to the next lecture. And in this lecture, we are going to look at the available APIs or the availability APIs in Swift 2.0. A very common programming paradigm or a very common programming problem that we do in iOS is that we look for different things like a device capability, or we look for the iOS version, and based on if the iOS version is found, we do certain things. Let's say you are building an app for a camera, okay, a front-facing camera. Now the front-facing camera was introduced in the later phones, not in the previous phones like iPhone 3GS or 3G. They don't have the front-facing camera. So you have to write some code to make sure that the code is running on devices, and those features are enabled only on devices that have front-facing camera. So we're going to do that similar thing, but with 3D Touch. 3D Touch is, of course, only available on iPhone 6s and iPhone 6s Plus. And also it has to have iOS 9. So even though if you have iPhone 5 and iPhone 6 running iOS 9, 3D Touch is not available on those devices. So we have to make sure that 3D Touch is available on the device. Now, since this is about 3D Touch, which is a hardware feature, I'm actually running this demo on the device itself because it's not going to work on the simulator. And the screen doesn't really have anything, so don't worry about that because we are just going to display something in the console right here in the output. All right, so let's get started. So what I want to do is I want to find out if the 3D Touch is available on the device. If it is available, if it's enabled, then we're going to print something on the console. Simple, right? So let's go ahead and use the old method of doing things. So trade collection, and I am currently using iOS 9 as the framework, deployment framework. Response to selector, and over here, I'm just going to say force touch capability. Okay. Now, basically, what we're doing over here, we are asking the trade collection, which knows about the phone, the size and size classes and all that stuff, and we are basically invoking, or we are trying to see that if we can invoke this method, which is the force touch capability property. Okay, so if we can, then that means that okay, we can actually go further. But basically, the person has iOS 9 installed. All right, and then after that, we can simply say trade collection dot force touch capability is, if it's available, then we can simply say over here that the 3D touch is available. Okay. Now, once again, I'm going to run this on the device itself and not the simulator. So let's go ahead and run it on the device. So most probably you're not going to see anything apart from something on the console. So here we go. Since I have a iPhone 6s, which actually has 3D Touch, this is printed on the console or the output, 3D Touch is available. So this is the old method of doing things. We are using response to selector, and we are basically making sure that this selector exists, okay, before actually calling it. All right, so if this selector exists, then we are saying that if the force touch is actually enabled. Now in iOS 9, Apple has introduced some availability APIs that will ease the pain of doing this. So basically what we can say is we can say available, and then we can say iOS 9 and all the versions that are the newer, which is like 9.1, 9.2, 10.1, 10.2. So all the future versions. And then I can simply say over here the same thing, trade collection.force touch capability. If it's available, then I can simply say print 3D touch is available. So you can see that the syntax is quite nice now. We don't have to do response to selector, pass in the selector. We're just using the availability API, which is introduced in iOS 9, to do that. And if we run this, It's going to produce the same result. Basically, it's going to just say, let me unlock my phone. It's just going to say that the 3D touch is available. There we go. Okay. But it doesn't end there. There are some really nice features that you can use. Oops. What about if you want to refactor the code and you want to call certain code on iOS 9 and certain code on iOS 8 and some code on iOS 7? You're refactoring it, right? You are making it easier to gather all the code which is designated for iOS 9, iOS 8, iOS 7, and so on. So you can actually do that. So if I go to, let's say, if I create a function over here, function, and I'm going to say iOS 9 method. So basically this method can only be called on iOS 9. Only to be called on iOS 9 and above. Okay, so basically you can decorate it with available attribute, and you can say over here iOS 9 and all the newer versions, which are 9.1, 9.2, 10, and so on. Now, you can call this, it's not a big deal, iOS 9 method, everything works fine. If you call it, it's just simply going to print this line. Now, what happens if you are trying to call this method on a version that is not iOS 9? So if I'm running the deployment target to 7, you will immediately see the effect that you can't even call this method on iOS 9. So this is a really, really cool feature, right? You are getting a kind of like a compiled, even before that, there's some background compilation going on, but you are getting an error message before you have even launched the app that you cannot call the method, which is called iOS 9 method, because we have decorated it with the attributes saying that this can only be called in iOS 9. Okay, let's go ahead and switch back to iOS 9 and you will see that it fixes the problem. There we go. You can also, it's not only related to iOS, right? So you can say OS X 10.10 and you can say tvOS, which is Apple TV 1, and you can say watchOS 2. So now this method is available on iOS 9. This method is available on 10.10. This is available on tvOS and watchOS. Okay. And that is pretty much it. This is basically the availability API in Swift 2.0. So it basically, it really reduces that barrier of calling response to selector and all those kind of checks that you are doing. And it also introduces the available attributes that you can decorate it on your class or methods. And those methods or classes can only be invoked on the platform that you have actually described, which right now over here is these 4 platforms. So that's pretty much it for the availability API. I hope you will use this if you are building your iOS 9 application instead of response to selector, because it's much clearer the intention of what you're trying to do. That's pretty much it. Stay tuned for more lectures. Thank you very much.